Good morning. This is a show that was brought to me by my viewer Eunice many, many weeks ago, and I apologize, Eunice, for not getting to it sooner. Excuse me, I got some kind of tickle in my throat. I'm hoping to get through this show okay. It's important. It's who's watching our children. And Eunice brought up the fact that there are too many cases in this country of caregivers, people who a parent entrusts their child's care with, causing serious harm or death to their most precious thing, their children. Some of you may say, oh, well, how the hell do you talk about this? You don't have children. Well, this is going to sound odd, and you can put your thumbs away already. I have a dog, and my dog is going to be 8 years old in July. Do you know how many times I have left my dog with a stranger? Zero. Never. One of us, either me or my husband, is always with our dog, taking care of her. Because it's hard to find good people to take care of our dog the way we want her to be cared for. If we want to go on a vacation, we want our dog to be happy while we're gone, not miserable, not being mistreated, making sure she feels like she's at home. That's hard to do. It's even harder when you have children, to find people to take care of your children as you would take care of them if you could be there. I've never given birth to a child. But when you give birth to a child, I know plenty of parents, you love that child with everything you've got. And most mothers, and I'm talking to mothers here because mothers are the true caregivers. We're the ones, the women take care of the children. We know that. But today, in our society, with our economy, mothers can't be home with their children like they used to be. So we're talking as early as 6 weeks of age. A mother has to give her child over, her precious baby, to strangers to care for. Many times that's in the form of a daycare center. So let's just start there. Daycare is expensive, right? Mothers will agree on that. But who's really getting the money you pay when you give over your precious baby to a daycare worker? Is the worker getting the money, or is the owner of the daycare getting the money, the administrators? I hear people say that they pay $300 to $600 a week for daycare. And yet I see and talk to daycare workers who make minimum wage. They get an hourly rate. They get really crappy benefits. The administrators, the owners of the daycare centers, they're the ones with the name on the door. They get your $300 and $600. The people who are responsible for going to your baby when it's crying, to feeding your baby regularly, to changing your baby's diaper, they're getting minimum wage. Some of them could make more if they worked at McDonald's. Can you stand it? I can't. I think being responsible for taking care of somebody else's infant while they're out working to support that infant, I think they should get paid a lot more than someone who flips burgers at McDonald's. I think their job is more important, and they should be paid accordingly. I don't know how much these daycare workers are vetted. You don't either. That's the problem. It used to be that if you wanted to go out for an evening, you would hire the neighbor girl down the street, 15, 16 years old. She would come into the house. You'd pay her $1 or $2 an hour, and she would watch your babies for you, your kids for you. And she would do her homework or watch some TV and maybe eat a sandwich out of your fridge. Today, the 16-year-old girl that comes into your house is going to completely ignore your children, raid your liquor cabinet, eat everything out of your refrigerator, and invite her boyfriend over to have sex with her in your bed. It's happened. Today's teenagers are a little different. Oh, and by the way, the today teenage girl, she's going to charge you $10 an hour. That $1 to $2 an hour for babysitters from high school, that doesn't happen anymore. I used to babysit, believe it or not. When I used to babysit, I used to take my county cross stitch. The kids were usually already in bed. I really didn't have to do anything, except I had to be there if one of the kids woke up and needed something. And that was my job. So for $1, $2 an hour, I was able to have some peace and quiet. I was all by myself in the house with the kids. And I was doing my cross stitch, watching some TV, reading my book, doing some homework. Maybe I would make a sandwich. Certainly never thought of raiding the alcohol cabinet. But today's kids are different. They invite friends over and have a party. Parents today, when they leave their children with a babysitter in their home, they have to put cameras up to see what's actually going on in their home. Some parents have actually caught nannies, people they pay to live in their home and take care of their children. They've caught them abusing their children, smacking them, slapping them, shaking them, throwing them on the floor, ignoring them when they cry. Scary. And then to connect with yesterday's show, which we did about bullying, when your child turns 5 years old, you have to turn them over to more strangers, to teachers, to children that you don't know, and the parents of these children who you don't know. You don't know how these children have been raised. If they have been raised to accept your child no matter what, or to hate your child because your child's a little different. But you got to turn your kid over to the public school system. And now it's up to these teachers who you also really don't know. They are responsible now to keep your children safe 8 hours a day and send them home safe to you. And sometimes, unfortunately, they drop the ball. We talked about Panda Bear yesterday, my girl, who suffered such horrible bullying and abuse in her school that her mother has now had to start homeschooling her because the teachers at her school refuse to call out the bullies, to call their parents, to stop it. We have seen situations where coaches, piano teachers, gymnastic teachers, pastors, preachers, Catholic priests have abused our children. You know, if we live in a day and age where you can't trust a priest to be alone with your child because they're going to do something to them, it's sad. But you have to be careful. You have to know who these people are. Because you can't protect your children from the outside world forever. They are going to interact with strangers, people you don't know, who could cause them harm. Recently, right here in Lancaster, there was a man that was convicted in, I believe it's 2011, of shaking his girlfriend's baby to the point that the child was basically brain dead, in a coma. And he was convicted of assault and abuse and all that. But just last week, that child died. And it took 7 years for that child to die. He was already dead. He didn't have 7 years of life because of what this monster did to him. The mother trusted the wrong person, but he was her boyfriend. Why not trust him to watch the baby? I'm just going to go run some errands. When she comes home, her child's in a coma. And now the child is dead. And you may say, well, good, this guy's going to get convicted of murder now. What about the child? A child who never got to experience his first birthday. A child who didn't get to go to kindergarten. A child who should be 7 years old right now and enjoying life and running around and playing and is dead. While this monster is going to be healthy and spend the rest of his life in jail, but he's going to be healthy. He has a life. the child that he was responsible for caring for is done. His life is over. And his life was over 7 years ago. This kind of thing is sad, but it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And it's time that parents step up. If you don't think that someone who is caring for your child is doing it properly, you need to say something. If you think a teacher is messing with your child, a coach is messing with your child, a priest is messing with your child, a Sunday school teacher is messing with your child, a daycare worker is messing with your child, or just even simply not doing their job the way you believe the money you're paying them to do it was intended, say something. There are too many vulnerable children out there who don't have a voice. We are their voice. Even me, a child-free person, and I'm proud to be child-free. I make no bones about that. It doesn't mean that I think it's okay to shake a child until their brain gets scrambled. I don't think it's okay for a 22-year-old school teacher to have sex with a 13-year-old kid. I don't think it's okay for a Catholic priest to rape an altar boy. That's not okay. It's not okay for a babysitter or a daycare worker to let a child sit in a dirty diaper because they're busy, or they had to take a phone call, or they're playing, what's that game, Candy Crush, because they're only getting paid minimum wage. It's not like, they're rocket scientists, right? They don't pay me enough for this shit. I'll just play my game and let the kid cry it out. That's not what a mother would do. And when we give our children over, when you give your kids over to a daycare center, or to a babysitter, or a nanny, to a school district, to a church, you expect them to be safe. You expect them to be treated the way that you treat them. You don't expect them to be abused, neglected, ignored, or God forbid, raped. That's not what you expect. It's not what you pay for. You don't expect to bring a babysitter into your house and come home and have the liquor cabinet empty. And your child in a dirty diaper who has been crying all night long. To me, that's criminal. That babysitter should be prosecuted for child neglect. You don't expect to be dating a person and say, hey, can you watch the baby for an hour? I'll be right back. And come home and have your baby in a coma. Because the person you trusted with your precious baby, lost his temper, couldn't stand the crying. Hey, shook the baby, shut him up, and also killed him. Sorry. That's sick. Unfortunately, in our society, we have a lot of single, very young mothers who don't have the support of their baby's fathers. So they're going to date. They are going to bring men into their lives. And they have to be careful because most of the time it is the men. The ladies, the girl, the mother's boyfriend kills the baby. When you make a decision as a young woman to have a child, you now have a responsibility. Maybe you're not ready for it. Well, you should have thought about that before you had sex and didn't use protection, and now you have a baby. And your baby daddy is nowhere to be found. That's on you. It's not on the baby. It's not the baby's fault. So if you're going to bring men into your home, which is, you're right, you're going to date, you're young, you want to maybe meet the right man, but you got to be careful. Because in most cases where an infant is killed by a man, it's not the father of the baby that kills the child. It is the boyfriend of the baby's mother who kills the child. That's statistics. It's right. It's proven. It's really hard for some reason for many men to actually love somebody else's child as much as they would love their own child. They would never shake their own child if it was crying. But they'll shake yours because it's not theirs. It's not their blood, not their DNA. You have to be careful. It is a mother's responsibility to protect her child in any way she can. Mary Beth did that yesterday when she decided to start homeschooling Panda Bear. My Panda Bear. See, just saying your name makes me smile, sweetheart. She is protecting her child because the people that were paid by the school district to protect her child refused to do so. The parents of the bullies in her neighborhood, even. Her child can't even go outside to play. Her and a couple other kids. That was brought up in the show yesterday on the comments. If you see the show from yesterday, it's on the comments. Our kids can't go out to play because of these bullies. The parents don't do anything about the bullies. The school won't do anything about the bullies. So now the parents have to take on the responsibility of homeschooling their kids because their children are not safe in school. Not because someone's going to bring in a gun, but because they are being emotionally tortured every day. These kids are terrified to go to school because of the evil and horrible things other children their own age say about them. And the teachers don't do anything, the school doesn't do anything, and the parents of the bullies don't do anything. It's a problem. It needs to be solved. And I'm actually going to go on the air and say to my viewer, Mary Beth, I think you and your friends should honestly consider contacting a lawyer and sue the school district because your children no longer feel safe attending the school. Not because of security issues or guns or anything like that, but because that every day your kids go to school, they are tortured psychologically, emotionally. They are abused. And the teachers and the school allow it to happen. The school has not done their job of providing your kids with a safe place to get an education, which is their job. And it is your right. You pay taxes in that school district. Your children should be able to go there and feel safe and get their education. So I would strongly recommend talking to a lawyer and suing the school district for refusing to protect your children from bullies that they are well aware of. And I think that any person out there who sees a child being abused by anybody, you have a duty to say something. If you live next door to someone and you hear things being thrown and you know there's a baby or a child in the house, call 911. You can always say sorry later if you overreacted, but you know what? You can't say sorry after a child is killed or severely injured. If you see a child or think a child is in danger, say something. You can always say I'm sorry later and ask for forgiveness if you were wrong. But you'll never be able to forgive yourself if you ignore it. Political Paula, out.